Welcome. If you're listening to this, chances are you care about staying active, or you've had a recent reminder of how quickly that can change, often due to pain. Most people don't see it coming. They're coping, carrying on, and doing what they've always done, until one ordinary moment becomes one step too far.
Welcome to the 3 Rules to Stay Active for Life. I'm Gavin Routledge, a lifestyle medicine professional, osteopath and author. And in this podcast, I'll share a few simple frameworks to help you suffer less pain and feel more confident about your current and future health. If your body never feels fully at ease, how well can it really adapt or recover? There's the question to think about. So, relaxation, or the verb relax, is often equated with laziness, weakness, even a lack of ambition. And high-functioning people are especially prone to skipping the practice of relaxation. But here's the thing, relaxation isn't a personality trait. It's a physiological state that the body must access to work at its best. So, a little bit of science here. There's one background part of your nervous system called the autonomic nervous system. Now, autonomic, very close to the word automatic. So you can think of this as something that operates in the background. It controls things like sweating, how rapidly your heart beats, how fast you're breathing, your digestive system. Lots of these background activities are controlled to a large extent by your autonomic nervous system. Now, you can think about your autonomic nervous system as having 2 opposing parts, like 2 teams. One team is called the sympathetic nervous system, and that team is associated with fear, flight, fight. And then the opposite team is the parasympathetic nervous system, and this is to do with rest and relax, digest. It's calming down, it's rebuilding, it's recovery mode. And these 2 states are essential to not just our survival, but to our happiness. If you're constantly in a state of high arousal on the sympathetic side, you really are going to burn out. Things are going to eventually break down. Nobody can operate in a high state arousal all of the time for a persistent period. This is what results in, as I said, breakdown and all sorts of other things that can go wrong with your physiology. Some short term, some very long term. So the parasympathetic state is equally important. When you eat a meal, for instance, it's really important that your digestive tract is allowed to operate optimally. Otherwise, you're not going to digest that meal fully. And the parasympathetic nervous system needs to be dominant during periods of digestion, for instance. You don't want to be outrunning a lion when you're trying to digest your lunch. You probably don't want to be outrunning a lion at any time. Anyway, so you just cannot keep your foot on the accelerator and expect the engine to cool. Now, I'm moving along a little bit and focusing on a very particular aspect of your physiology, and it's one that we all get concerned about at some point in life, and that is pain. Now, stress doesn't usually cause pain on its own, but it certainly amplifies it. It amplifies lots of things. Your sensitivity to pain is increased by stress. Stress also slows down your recovery. It disrupts sleep. It reduces your movement tolerance, your ability to move and cope with physical load. And it also narrows your decision making under load. So when you're stressed, you're just not so good at making good outcome decisions or optimal decisions. Coming back a little bit towards the pain component, high stress and low mood are the strongest predictors of increased pain sensitivity and symptoms, particularly pain-related symptoms, persisting for longer. And there's all sorts of physiological processes that drive are mechanistic there. So relax is the next essential practice. And it's a super important one. If you are never relaxing, then you are never allowing your body and your mind to fully recover. Even brief periods of relaxation can be helpful in just triggering that parasympathetic state to allow you to drop into relaxation mode. So relaxation essentially allows the nervous system to down-regulate. And without this, changes don't consolidate. So let's say you want to learn something. And very often people produce more adrenaline when they're trying to learn something. And that's an optimal state for learning, for absorbing the information. But then if you want to embed that newfound knowledge, a parasympathetic state is really important. You don't want to stay in that sympathetic high arousal state for long, otherwise you're not going to embed the knowledge. Here's another example. When you exercise strenuously, let's say you've gone to the gym and you've done some strengthening exercise, then you'll be operating in a sympathetic state. And that's what you need. You need your adrenaline to be coursing around your body, pumping those muscles, getting everything working. But then after that, if you stay in that high sympathetic existence, you will not benefit nearly as much from the exercise as you will if you drop into a parasympathetic state. Now, again, I'm not going to go into the real deep weeds of exercise and how much rest should follow exercise and all of that sciencey stuff, but it's important at a high level to recognize that we need to operate in cycles. And relaxation is the rest and recovery mode. And without those rest and recovery periods, you're never going to be able to operate at your best. Fundamentally, without recovery mode, you're not able to consolidate the effort that you put in during those sympathetic periods. So just casting back over the cliff of pain and our previous essential practices, we've talked about how measuring enables you to see patterns over time. And that the reduced practice enables you to lower loads. And relaxation and the relaxed practice is fundamentally about allowing the system to actually reset, to recover. And as I said with the examples I've given, that adaptation happens during recovery, not during effort. So if you want those muscles to get stronger, they actually rebuild during this parasympathetic period. You know, the real effort when you're exercising, that's the sympathetic nervous system. That's the stimulus. But it's only during this parasympathetic period of recovery that you actually generate stronger muscles. Okay? So why do things spiral under pressure? Because stress doesn't sit in isolation. It isn't just a discrete thing. Stress is something that impacts your whole physiology. It changes how the body interprets signals. It magnifies the impact of load, movement, sleep, and your habits. And this explains why flare-ups, whether they be of pain or of other things, so a flare-up of your diabetes, for instance, or a rising of blood pressure, these things cluster around busy or pressured periods because you're simply not recovering. You're not dropping into the parasympathetic mode and allowing the body to recover. So I hope you understand that from everything I've said, why relax is a super important essential practice. It truly is essential that we have periods of relaxation, that we're able to recover, reset, and get stronger so that we can move on and achieve those goals, whatever they may be for you. And that might just be relaxing. It may just be being able to sleep. You know, for many people, that is a simple goal. And you can't possibly sleep if you're not able to drop into parasympathetic mode. So I don't usually finish these early foundational episodes with a recommendation, if you like, or an activity, but I'm going to make an exception here and suggest that you might want to think about one thing that you could do to encourage relaxation. Just build one intentional pause into your day. And when you're doing that, and of course the mindful practice and meditation is very useful for this, just notice how often rest is delayed until exhaustion. Yeah, so rest and recovery should be an automatic practice. Just as go, go, go is part of so many people's lives, so should rest be an integral part of your life. And yet for many people, and I encourage you to notice this, how often is rest delayed until exhaustion sets in, until you really have to, whether that's the end of the day where you lie down in bed, you're absolutely knackered, or you're forced to relax because you just cannot keep going, you're exhausted. So take a bit of time to think about that and ideally build some sort of intentional pause into your day. Okay, so we're going to look a little bit forward into the next episode. In the next episode, we're not going to be talking about an essential practice. We're going to be talking specifically about pain. And what makes pain confusing is that it's rarely about one thing. And stress, which we've just covered, is one of the strongest amplifiers of pain. But it's only one variable. Pain usually emerges from several interacting factors, and focusing on just one rarely works for very long and certainly doesn't work for long-term persistent pain. So in the next episode, I'm going to introduce you to the pain equation. But until then, focus on relaxation and remember that relaxation isn't about indulgence. It is an absolute necessity, a requirement for recovery, learning, adaptation, and fundamentally getting stronger, getting as far back from the edge of the cliff as possible. Okay, I'll speak to you soon. If today's episode sparked a shift in how you think about your body or your health, don't try to change everything at once. Choose one small action this week, something that nudges you towards staying active rather than avoiding discomfort. That's how confidence is rebuilt. You'll find further episodes exploring the 3 rules and the habits that matter most, not by doing more, but by doing things better. This program is provided for general information only and should not be taken as medical advice. If you have persistent or worsening symptoms, please seek appropriate medical guidance.